leadership traits and challenges. This is a best of episode of Biz Bites, and you're going to get some amazing bits of information and stories from Nancy, Ed, Ben, George, and Stephen. They give you so much value. The original podcast episodes are still there for you to listen to, but this is a little snippet of some of the best of each of those on that theme of leadership traits and challenges. Stay tuned and listen to Biz Bites.
I had just enough life experience of I don't care what you think and you can't touch me, that I'm like, I'll hold this possibility. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to fire me? And what's the best thing that happens? That we treat people like people, and as a byproduct, both sides win. And I was crazy enough for long enough, and trust me, people have told me I'm crazy my whole career, and they're like, you're full of crap, this will never work, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, until it does. Until it does. And I've had enough life experience that, like, what, you're going to kick me out of a boardroom? I'm like, have you ever had to poop out of the side of a truck in the middle of a firefight? Like, no, great. Like, your words don't really matter to me. And I'm like, oh, great, you're not going to pay me? Great, I'm going to go home and find somebody else. Like, I just don't care at that level. And so because of that, it's allowed me to pursue a lot of things. But on the other side, on the opposing end of that coin, is I've probably made every mistake you can make, and I've probably lost more money than anybody could ever imagine. And the more I lost it, the more unattached I became to it, which allowed me to stay focused on what mattered in the first place. And then magically it reappears. And so it's been this, this mesh pool of experience. And then because of my confidence, and my confidence doesn't come from knowing that everything I do will work. My confidence comes from knowing that I won't stop until it does, no matter how much you pay me, right? And so with that, it got me into some rooms and into some places I didn't belong. Like, my first job as a consultant was a $1 billion company who handed me a $20 million a month ad budget. And I'm like, I'll figure it out. And so when I played Monopoly with their money, I cared about it more than it was my own, because I didn't want to affect anybody's life or take money out of their pocket. And I was like, I would convince myself the mafia was going to put a hit on me if I lost it. And so I just learned, and I feel like a lot of my life in the Marine Corps just helped me stay, we call it PUP, having peace under pressure. And just knowing that no matter what constraint exists around me, as long as I stay aligned and level-headed and clear on the outcome, it's really just a matter of time until you figure it out. And that's what entrepreneurship is, right? It's you only lose when you quit. But for every highlight reel that you see, there's 175 failures, and we just managed to stand up one more time. But every time you stand up, you know not to stand there again or step there again or turn your face when that next swing comes in. And I think the more experience you have, the faster you figure out the game.
I love that. And you made me, while you were talking, suddenly had this flashback of when I was younger. And I really wish I could remember who the author was of this, but there was a short poem that I learnt when I was younger. Don't be jealous of the wealthy man. Remember this, please do. In years to come, the wealthy man will be just as dead as you.
Yeah, that is such a good poem. That is such a good poem. And you know what's so funny is, like, the reason I have this perspective is I had some incredible leaders in the Marine Corps. I also had some horrible leaders in the Marine Corps. But I'll never forget, I met a general like that, they're like, oh, you can't talk to him. And I was like, and he looked me dead in the eye one day and he's like, bro, let's have a cup of coffee. We both put our pants on the same in the morning. I just been in this game a whole lot longer. And like, he just installed this thing into me. Like, at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? No matter what experience we have, what job we have, how much money we make. And I think the only time people lose is when you believe either side of the coin, that we're any different, any better, or there's a wedge between any of us based on the labels that the world creates, because you nailed it, right? And depending on what you believe in, like, I'm a man of faith, I'm a man of God, but depending on what you believe in, you either get cremated or buried 6 feet under, or God forbid some wild animal eats you and you disappear. But no matter what, we all end up in the same place. Not here anymore. Not here anymore. And I think that perspective is lost on a lot of people. And I also think it's a big trap in entrepreneurship, because I watch hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs sacrifice their time thinking that they're going to get it back in the end when they just piss it all away and never get to enjoy it in the first place, when enjoying it is one of the secrets to success.
The Platinum Rule, which is a book by that name by Tony Alessandra and a co author, is all about the fact that we need to treat others the way they want to be treated. Hence, we need to be putting them in the spotlight, in the center stage. And it isn't about us. It isn't about how I look or what I say. It's about listening to my prospect, tuning into their needs, and again, serving them. What is it that will help them best? It's not about me, it's about my prospect.
And I think that's also an interesting idea as well, because you can automatically assume that they know. But sometimes that's the problem as well, is that they've come to you, they know they need something, and what they think they need and what they actually need can be two quite different things. So listening and actually conversing with them is absolutely important, rather than just sort of seeing someone and going, oh, okay, they're going to need program or product A, when that may not be the case at all.
And that was a big mistake that I made early in my sales career. When I first found myself selling mental health services in the workplace, as soon as my prospect would say anything that came anywhere near what it was that I offered, I would grab hold of it and I would, massage it and rub it, and I would play it up. And you know what? It wasn't necessarily a top priority or what was on their minds. But it was on my mind because I thought that's how I could sell. And again, this is a mistake that many of us make, that we don't really pull from our prospect, probe more deeply. What is it that's going on? They initially say something, and for many of us, we take that at surface value. But one of the really good skills in selling is to ask more questions, and to ask a question that enables your prospect to go deeper and deeper into, why is that important? What would be the benefit? What would happen if it doesn't take place, and so forth, and really get them to understand the situation. That is actually serving them, even if they choose not to do business with you. The fact that you've given them some clarity about their situation is a service, and you've done, a good deed.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, isn't it? Because if you go in with a mindset of a conversation and helping people, you may not always get the sale, but not instantly anyway. Because I think if you help people and you give of something, then that's more memorable than, oh, that person just tried to sell to me. Because we've all had first conversations with people, or first contacts with people, which is highly annoying, where they've barely said hello and they're, selling something immediately.
Yes, it happened again today. I guess it happens every day if you are a person out there that you're going to be solicited. Oh, you're a coach, you're a consultant, you must need fill in the blank, some kind of service. Neglecting to take a look at whether or not the service does exist already, or am I discontent with the service? And there's no questioning in that area. It's an assumption. And I think that the word assumption, I know you probably heard it, I've heard it, that it's made up of the word ass, you, and me. That when you assume something, you're neglecting both of us in this relationship. It's not allowing us to connect as real humans. So hence, yeah, not a good plan.
It's easier to make a friend than to make a sale. And so I approach it in a way that is very relaxed, but I'm just out there making friends. And so it makes it a lot easier to do business once your mindset is, I'm just trying to make a friend. I'm not trying to make a sale. Just because somebody said, accepted my connection request does not mean that they want to be a client.
What I find really interesting about what you've said there is that this is coming from someone whose background is in sales, right? That's
Indeed.
you know, and so you know, is there this inner conflict? Because, you know, as a salesperson, don't you want to just go out and sell?
It is. In fact, I have quite a few clients that are in sales, and they're always asking me, when do I start selling? When do I start selling? I said, we're not going to sell. And they go, well, how am I supposed to make any money? You're going to be fine. What we're going to do is we're going to make friends, and then we're going to get that new connection to discover your content. And once they do that, and they've done three things: they've become comfortable with you, they trust you, and they're confident that you can do what you say, then they'll do business with you. But you can't skip steps. Most people want to skip to, well, let's do business. Well, you skipped over comfort and trust. They're not going to, well, they may do business with you if they're desperate. That's not the greatest client to have, because if everything's got to go right if you're going to keep them. And they're probably going to be very, very difficult along the way. But once you have comfort and trust and confidence, then you can make mistakes and they'll be very forgiving because they know that you can help them get to the end goal. And it's more of a collaboration than them just handing everything over to you and say, okay, you do it, and make things happen for me.
Yeah. So I think that this whole approach of being friends first is a really interesting one. And I don't want to give away the whole book. There's lots of things in the book. No More Cringe. I love the title, by the way. So let's just talk about that for starters, because I think that's the basis of the whole idea, is that when you're making friends with someone, you don't want to be cringy. And yet, how many times do you find yourself when you're reaching out to people being exactly that? I was thinking only the other day that, how do I actually type an introductory message to someone that doesn't sound like it's either cringy or written by an AI, even though it's genuinely me writing it? It's so difficult to do that. And I think you flipped that completely on its head. So, but tell me what encouraged the title. How did that come about? And then let's get into the whole cringe factor.
That actually was, we were talking about viral posts. It became a series of posts that I did that did very well. And my best performing posts talked about, there were polls and there were posts about people reaching out to them after you connect. And everybody agreed. Well, not everybody. The people that want to sell, they thought it was okay. But over 80% of people said, I hate it when people do that. I don't like it when they start pitching or they start spamming my inbox or they ask me for a 15-minute appointment. I just met you. I don't know anything about you. You don't know anything about me. Why would I meet you for 15 minutes? And because there was so much emotion in the comments that I got, I realized that I was onto something. I should talk about this process. And so I talk about the 7 cringy methods that are out there, and everybody can relate to any one of the 7 because they've probably been approached in that way. And they probably used one of them because they didn't know any better. But I figured there has to be a better way. And the way you work things in networking, I look at it as a client has more value or a connection has more value than just potentially being a client. They could be a referral partner. They could be a collaboration partner, which is more valuable than being a client because they could bring in several clients to you. Or they could just be a friend, somebody that supports your content and you support them. And if you proceed with that mindset, then you really can't lose.
You think about marketing like that, I always think about you got to outwit, you got to outsmart, you got to outplay your competitors. Yep. And your competitors are trying to do the same thing, right? And there are some that are just not in the game, and that's okay. They haven't turned up, they haven't been selected or casted for the show. But those that are in the show, you've got to compete with them. And whether it's SEO, whether it's Facebook ads, whether it's offers, sales teams, strategy, like all of that is what you've got to think about. And you've got to move with what, you've got to be fluid because things change quickly in business as well from a marketing point of view. So the first thing I say to people is, have you got strategy? Because if you don't have digital strategy, if you don't have going into the game some sort of strategy, and we've seen it in Survivor, people that don't have a strategy, they don't last. Just being a nice guy doesn't mean you're going to win. So you need a strategy, and that strategy needs to be thought through. And I think what happens is, and the reason why our business DigiTLC is so popular and successful is because we don't just say, okay, we'll run ads for you, or okay, we'll write blogs for you, or we'll just do SEO for you. What we do is we develop a digital strategy. And that digital strategy encompasses three core engines, what I call, of digital marketing, because there are three engines. It's a bit like a rocket. If you can imagine a rocket has three engines, if only one or two of them are going, that rocket's going to do a U-turn pretty quickly. It's not going to fly straight. So all three need to be going. So in your digital strategy, you need to think about that. If you want to stay ahead of everybody, you've got to be thinking about not just, okay, I've got to run an ad on Facebook or I've got to do SEO, but how do I then deal with those leads? And what does my sales process look like to convert those? And how am I maximizing my average dollar sale with each of those? Because that means I can then invest more back into my strategy. And that's just really about staying ahead, is thinking about it as a whole thing, not just one aspect of that bigger picture.
I think it's such an important thing. It's a lesson that big business does quite well in terms of the diversification of portfolios. It's a lot of those big businesses in any kinds of sectors tend to have other things that they're interested in. And it's quite interesting that they don't put all their eggs in one basket. And whether it's a group that's more of an investment type group and there's investing in different types of businesses, or whether it's a singular business that has investing in different kinds of resources. Without naming companies, I was looking at an energy company on the weekend, and they were talking about diversification in different types of energy that they're using to be able to resell to customers. And it's the same thing in business. You can't just rely on the one thing. The hard part in small business, of course, is that you want your focus to be on one or two things that are solid, because you've only got so much attention span, as we've talked about. But by the same token, if you're reliant on one, you're very vulnerable.
Yeah, I think that is one of the juggling acts for a business owner in today's age, is knowing that you need, I always say you need 10 by 10. So 10 things that are bringing in 10% each,
Yep.
Whether it's customers, whether it's lead generation strategies, because if one thing stops working, it has an impact, but it's not a huge impact. And so, to use your casing point there, if you had one contract that brought in 90% or 98% of your income and that contract stopped, well, then you don't have any income. So it's the same with lead generation and marketing and people and, all those things. You need redundancy built into a business if it's going to be successful. And so that's really, really important. But on the other hand, so it's focus. And it is hard to focus when you're juggling many balls. And we see this time and time again with business owners, is they are trying to do everything, and you can't be good at everything. In fact, what happens is you end up sucking at everything.
Yep.
And, you do a really bad job at everything instead of just picking the one thing you're passionate about. I guess that's probably what has been good for me, is I know what I'm good at or what I like to do. So I just do that.
Think of a time where you're not functioning at your best, right? You don't feel your best because or your mind is not where it should be. The decisions that you make, it's very foggy, And so most people, really, business owners that are, really mindful of that, they understand that, the number one thing I've got to do in my business really well is to make decisions. And in order to make great decisions, I've got to be in the right state of mind. And in order to be in the right state of mind, in order for me to change my psychology, I've got to change my physiology, which is the way that I move my body. Hence why,
But how easy is it for people to make that leap, right? Because that's what I'm trying to understand is in your experience, is there enough of a percentage of people that are for you that are, obviously you've built a business over this, are they coming to you because they've had that realization and that's where they're there, or do they need to be prompted into that realization?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they have to get to a point where they're a little bit dissatisfied. It's totally true. They have to get to a point where they're carrying too much weight. For example, it's a common thing. We have business owners that are just they're sick and tired of not hitting their goals and carrying excess weight that makes them feel tired. And most people have to get to a point, and it's usually some form of desperation where they feel like, okay, that's enough is enough, I need to take control of this, So Most people don't act out of inspiration. That's the bottom line, especially when it comes to business leaders or business owners that we're talking about, right? So, because their priority is elsewhere, and I get that, like they're trying to be world class at something else, they're not trying to be world class at their health, they just know that it's important. Or I'm biased, but it is an extension of their business. There's no question about that, So if they want to become a high performing individual, they can't pour garbage into their body expecting it, expecting their body to drive like a Ferrari pouring ethanol. That's the mentality.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me because when I reflect back on my career, I certainly have some visions of the early days of my career where people would sit, for example, with a 2-liter bottle of Coke on their desk and would polish off that bottle by the end of the day by themselves. If they've barely left the desk. In fact, in those days, you could still smoke at your desk, which obviously not advisable for anybody anywhere. But I certainly wasn't. But it was that were the days when people would smoke inside, and so they'd be smoking and drinking Coke, and so that was kind of an extreme that I've seen, in a work environment. But it is difficult to pull yourself out, because I think that mentality is of, well, do I go for the walk or the 1 hour fitness session, or hang on, I've just got to do this first, and suddenly that hour has disappeared, right? And that opportunity, that window that you had, isn't there anymore. And I think that must be the trap. And again, I'm speaking for myself here, that I know it's the trap that you can fall into very easily. You lose that sense of time, and suddenly you're trapped in, and suddenly you found that excuse once, twice, 3 times, and suddenly it's a permanent excuse.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the biggest challenge is this, Anthony, that I've experienced, right, is business owners seem to have this all or nothing mentality, right? It's just because it's served them. They've gone all in like running their business, or committed to this, or like being a high performing business leader or executive. They have this, like, I find with my clients, the biggest mindset shift that has to happen is taking away that all or nothing mentality. Like, Stephen, if I commit to this, it means that I have to take out an hour of my time, which I don't have time anyway, to dedicate in whether like my food or my nutrition, or I have to meal prep, I have to do all these things, or I shouldn't do it at all, And I think that's the biggest shift that's got to happen first. That's the story that they tell themselves, that is it worth an hour of my time, like an hour a day to go and work out, for example? Now, I don't focus on working out, but that's the mentality they have when they come to me. That's the story that they have. Like, is it going to take me a lot of time? Because naturally, these people are time poor. Most people, like yourself, Anthony, you're time poor. So expecting you to manufacture more time is not the right mentality. Rather, the right mentality you've got to ask yourself is, what's better? Is 50% of something better than 100% of nothing?
Hey, thanks for listening to Biz Bites. We hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Biz Bites is proudly brought to you by Podcasts Done For You, the service where we will deliver a podcast for you and expose your brilliance to the world. Contact us today for more information. Details in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites.